There will be violence. What groups am I talking about? Penguin people and polar bear people. Now personally, I'm a polar bear person. Every time I see a cute, cuddly carnivore, I can't help but feel warm fuzzies. Yet penguin people argue that penguins are less bloodthirsty, less dangerous, and cuter. Psh. You can just feel the tension. Okay, so maybe this topic isn't enough to divide the country. Yet other, just as ridiculous issues are splitting us. Yes, I am talking politics. Instead of describing the usual left-to-right spectrum, I decided to put a North Pole, South Pole swing on things. Either way, it's polarized. But seriously, we've reached the point when Washington official Rod Page calls the Democratic NEA a terrorist organization, and websites compare Bush to Hitler. Hopefully my metaphor demonstrates that we shouldn't let our attitudes towards politics become our attitudes towards each other. So how do we quench the fires of our political discontent? Well, the same way we quench any fire. Stop, drop, and roll. When we can stop antagonizing one another, drop our stereotypes, and roll with the flow, then we will cease to be Democrats and Republicans and start being Americans. Our biggest problem is that political parties are no longer opponents. They're enemies. Campaign managers act as generals, rallies are war zones, and elections become vicious battles. It's our modern Civil War. The Durham Sun-Herald reported one such battle 3 years ago. When Steve Winter's pro-Bush signs were stolen, he fought back. He put up new signs, which declared that the Bush 04 sign was stolen from here by communists. When asked to explain his sign, he said that the liberal Democrat of today is no different than a communist. They have no moral restraint, are willing to break the law, intimidate, and steal. This might be true of his thief, but it is not true of every Democrat. In this story, both parties are guilty of hatred. This hatred has been a problem since the beginning of the United States. Even George Washington warned against the dangers of political parties. In his farewell address, he said that parties can enfeeble a public administration, agitate the community with ill-founded jealousies, and kindle the animosity of one part of the nation against another. His fears certainly came to life during the Civil War, when the gap between Democrats and Republicans was almost as big as the gap between the North and South. If politics were enough to divide the country 150 years ago, then they can still divide us today. Luckily, the election of President Bush hasn't caused a war yet, but just in case, Dick Cheney has his gun ready. But we will never be able to stop the hostility until we drop our stereotypes, like my stereotype towards Dick Cheney. Our stereotypes of one another have become so bad that they're dehumanizing. That's why we need to drop them, quicker than I dropped AP Calculus. Democrats are no longer neighbors. They're tree-hugging, Birkenstock-wearing, hybrid-driving communists. Republicans ceased to be classmates and became gun-toting, gas-guzzling, racist, sexist warmongers. Candidates are stereotyped as well. Comedian Dave Barry compared the two parties' leadership abilities to changing a flat tire. Democrats are the kind of people who stop to help you change a flat, but would somehow manage to set your car on fire. The Republicans, on the other hand, would know how to fix your tire, but they wouldn't bother to stop. I wouldn't want to vote for either person to run my country. Stereotypes can have much more dire consequences as well. After the Nazis came into power in Germany, they began terrorizing the Jews. Finally, a Jewish man named Herschel Greenspan snapped after his uncle was deported to Poland. He waited in front of the German embassy in Paris with a gun and shot the first German official he saw. After the victim died, the Nazis took advantage of the situation. and portrayed all Jews as cold-blooded killers. This horrendous stereotype led to the Kristall Nacht. How long is it until our hostility elevates from a war of words to a war of actions? Well, now that you've stopped and dropped, you can finally let out that fiery political resentment by rolling with the flow. After all, Election Day only happens once a year. Okay, discussion over the 2008 election did start 3 years ago, but still. Bush is our president now, and despite our boo-hooing, he's going to stay that way until 2009. We don't have to agree with him, but we don't have to ridicule him either. Too often, we let our bitterness get in the way of our camaraderie. This was the case after the Virginia Tech shooting. While we should have been bonding together in the wake of the devastation, we let our politics rip us apart. A debate over gun control immediately ensued, while the nation was still breathing. Virginia Governor Tim Kaine condemned the political manipulation, stating, "To those who want to turn this into some sort of crusade, I say take this elsewhere." Our attention, which should have gone to the victims, was diverted by the never-ending political struggle. In many ways, we should thank the other party. After all, we have a two-party system for a reason. By simply existing, each party keeps the other in check. I don't know about you, but I wouldn't want either Bush or Clinton as my dictator. Our freedom to be different is what makes us a democracy. We weren't always lucky enough to have this freedom. During the 1950s, as Stalin oppressed the Soviets, America became oppressed as well. No, not under the communists we so feared, but under our own prejudice. Hundreds were imprisoned and thousands were fired for any small connection to the Communist Party. Their lives were ruined, not for a crime, but for a belief. So don't begrudge the other party their right to an opinion. You have that right too. Last November 6th was Election Day, exactly 69 years after Herschel Greenspan shot a man, and exactly 1 day after my 18th birthday. It was exciting to finally cast my vote, make my opinion heard, and make my own tiny difference in the way our government is run. But after all the votes were in and those results were announced, I had to stand behind my new laws and leaders. I know how to stop, drop, and roll. And now you do too. We know that, as important as elections are, what comes next is even more essential. It is after the election that the difference is made. As Rutherford B. Hayes once said, "He who serves his country best serves his party best." If both political parties serve our country, then we'll have no need for vicious arguments and name-calling. Just friendly debates. It's time to put the party back in political parties. Thank you.